Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is July 18th. It's 10:30 a.m. and it is episode 3 of Ask the Experts. I'm excited for today's episode where we are going to be talking about leadership, on how to lead your ship in your insurance agency or any of your businesses. And I'm excited to have our co-host Tony Merwin with us today. And
What?
we have a very, very special guest that we're about to introduce. So this person in just 4.5 years has propelled his insurance agency to 10 million in premium. That's right. You heard it right, folks. 10 million in premium. And he's earned the top 100 rankings out of 8,300 insurance agencies nationwide with Allstate Insurance. He's got a dedicated team of passionate people. He's a force to be reckoned with. And Beau's Leadership Academy has transformed thousands of careers. In his podcast, Conviction of a Leader is top 1% to 2% globally. Get ready for a deep dive into some leadership insights and some strategies that are going to elevate your career, elevate your business. This is going to be something you don't want to miss. So without further ado, I would like to introduce my good friend, Beau Vincent. Let's go.
Joe, when you're ready, there we are.
What's up, everybody? How are you today?
What's going on? Welcome to the show, my friend. I think we got a topic that's near and dear to your heart today with
Absolutely.
podcast Conviction of a Leader. We're going to be talking about leadership, and we got some great questions already curated from the audience from you
Awesome.
in advance. And then we're going to be riffing through some live questions as they come in. Before we get going, when it comes to leadership, I like to break down leadership very simple. Leadership starts with us. Everything is in the mirror, right? So
I agree.
I'm a big believer in extreme accountability, extreme responsibility when it comes to leadership. And the best way to remember leadership is to lead your ship. And you have to be careful of the last 4 letters, right? Because in order to have great leadership, what do you got to have? You got to have good partnerships. You got to have good friendships. You got to have good mentorships. And if you have all of those things, it's going to take you to the championship. But all it takes is compromising one core value. All it takes is compromising one wrong team member. And that just one person could create a ripple effect that sinks your ship. And those are going to be some of the things that we talk about today. And, the first question I got for you is, one thing I see with you is like you have just such a fire, such a heart, such a passion for around the topic of leadership. Why don't you tell the audience today where that came from and why that's so near and dear to your heart?
Wow. So thank you for having me on the show again. And thanks for the question, because obviously it is near and dear to my heart. And where did this fire come from? It came from, I think, a lack of leadership at certain points in my life and me wanting to have more leadership. And to be honest with you, if you want to be a great leader, you need to think about either the leaders that you loathe or the leaders that you loved. And I've learned so much from both. And it isn't to talk smack or crap about the ones that I loathe, but I learned from them. I learned who I wanted to be from them as much as I did from the ones that I loved to follow. So being the leader that I want to be has helped me. My conviction, we talk about on the Conviction of a Leader, we actually talk about what are your strongest convictions as a leader, which is just your strongly held beliefs. I believe I was called to help other people find who they were called to be and find fulfillment in leadership. I love leading leaders. It is just my jam. It's my favorite thing to do. But also it goes back to a younger age where it took until Dave later in high school when somebody actually finally made me feel like I was something. Like I had some sort of potential to be somebody. I always believed I did, but I always wondered, why did no one else see it? And it took one teacher, one time, and it was a marketing class, and she identified that I was a great leader, and she helped me pull out that leadership, because I have adapted this form of like leadership is not just in work, it's in the community, it's with your family, it's at church, everywhere you're at. Leadership is actually just a choice. It's not an authority title. So I just decided leadership was a choice that I was going to make to help lead other people to be the best version of themselves. And like you said, it starts with me working on being the best version of myself.
No, I love that. I love that. And one of the next questions we got here for you today is, when it comes to taking your agency to the next level,
Yeah.
obviously a big component of that has to be leadership. Can
Yeah.
you talk about maybe that one or two tipping points that you've had in your agency thus far where leadership was just a critical component to get over that hurdle? Because I know you're a $10 million business, right? And you weren't
Yeah.
always a $10 million business.
No.
But, a lot of times there's that tipping point that takes us all of a sudden after years and years of hard work. We go from, hey, maybe we're at 3 million and then boom, we hit the accelerator and we get to 10
Yeah.
million. But there's got to be certain fundamentals like leadership that are in place in order to get to that destination. Maybe can you
Right.
tell us about what that tipping point look like for you and then the importance of leadership being a part of that?
Yeah. That's a great question. So I'll be honest when I answer this. I believe it's about delegation, but finding the right people to delegate to. Now, I have 3 steps to leadership, Dave. We've talked about it. 3 steps are teach it, lead it, and expect it. When you find the right person, you need to teach them, lead them through modeling the behavior, and then expect it by holding accountability. So if I teach it and I lead it, I must expect it, must hold accountability. So when we find the right people, Dave, do you want to fly? You're an eagle, Dave, and not just from the American side of pride, but you're an eagle. Eagles fly way up here. Do eagles fly? You ever seen an eagle fly with anything but an eagle?
No,
Never.
absolutely. Nope.
Never have. Never
But
seen them with
sometimes,
chickens.
but sometimes you'll find an eagle with a crow on its back, and the eagle, what he does, he just flies to new depths until the crow falls out of the stratosphere.
Yep. So eagles will only fly with eagles. That's the only time you'll see them fly with another bird, unless somebody is what? Hanging on their coattail or their actual tail and riding them up. So when you identify great talent wants to be around other great talent. So it is the responsibility of the leader to cultivate and develop that talent. Not only find it. It's not good enough to find good talent. It's not good enough. You have to develop it and grow it. Culture is key. Now I laugh, Dave, because it's a trendy word to say we got good culture. Just like a couple of years ago, it was really trendy to say I'm a servant leader. Most people didn't even know what that meant, let alone follow it. I believe the culture is this. Culture is a group of people moving. Great culture is a group of people moving in the same direction with the same vision. So identifying a vision that you can speak on intelligently and other people can grasp that. So we love insurance. We love people more. I trademarked a couple of years ago. It was just a mantra and a slogan for my agency, but it actually became the core and the filter of everything that we did. So identify the vision, hire the employees, develop the employees, delegate to the leaders. That is how we have got to where we're at today. So finding a core is so important. And not only finding the core, but taking care of them and treating them like they are the most important thing in your business, because they are, not the customer. I've never once told my staff, hey, this customer is more important than you, so you better make it work. Never. I need them more than I need customers. I need thousands of customers to have one employee. So I can lose a couple to maintain one. And I hope a customer's not listening to this thinking, well, Beau, you just lost me. But no, if you work for me as a customer, you would love this leadership. So Dave, that's how we've snowballed into where we're at today.
No, I love with that. And I completely agree with that too. And it makes me, think about, Ben, back to that analogy, leading your ship. Think about it when you're leading a ship. Imagine if you're leading a rowboat and you're the captain, right?
Yeah.
So what do you got to do is you got to lead by example and get everybody rowing in the right direction.
Yeah.
Well, what would happen if, the captain's on the megaphone telling everybody they got to row forward, but all of a sudden they're looking at the captain and he's doing the opposite and he's rowing in the opposite direction. That to me is what I call shadow of a leader. What you're going to find in that scenario is more people will do as you do before they do as you say. So you can give them the message all day long, but then when you're wondering why are my people not following my directive? I keep telling them to do it. Well, no, what is the shadow that you're casting every single day in your building? Because that's what's really, actions speak louder than words. And that's what's really telling your team members of what's important to you. So bringing that in the lens and the scope for insurance, right? If you're focused on, hey, doing remedial $12 an hour tasks as the agency owner, you're focused on all admin stuff. You're focused on everything but the customer experience and driving revenue, which I believe are one of the two most important things in your business. What do you think your team is going to be focused on? So that's a great question. I encourage everybody to pose themselves today is what is the shadow? If you're just to be incredibly aware, take the blinders off because we all have them in our own businesses every day. And you were to look at yourself through a lens. Imagine like you're watching the review tapes back and you're in an NBA game, right? You're in the championship and you want to watch the review tapes back. What do those tapes tell in the story of the day that you led? Were they truly congruent with what you're saying? Or was the actions, not congruent with, the results you're looking to get inside of your business?
True.
What are your thoughts on leadership, Tony? And what questions you might have for Mr. Beau Vincent here today?
Yeah, I've got one pretty specific question, and it really ties into a lot of what you were just talking about in regarding the leader's responsibility to cultivate those things. Well, Jim Rohn said something that I find kind of interesting. He said that you should only work with those people that deserve it, not those that need it. And I'm kind of curious to your thoughts of that.
Yeah. You want to know what's funny is I love that. And I actually believe that. I think that the majority of leaders spend 80 to 90% with their bottom 10, 20% trying to remediate them, to fix them. And I know earlier in my career, I identified that was a big problem because I learned this. Tony, have you ever heard the word critical mass when it comes to leadership?
Well, no, not specific to leadership.
Okay. I'll explain what I mean by that. So, like Dave was saying, so the leader is important when the leader is rowing, because that's actually my step 2, which is I said lead it, right? Which is modeling the behavior. But most people will look to the leader who isn't actually the authority title. They look to somebody who is not the authority title that actually is the leader. Have you ever noticed that in businesses? You'll see the real leader is a licensed sales producer that crushes it and everybody looks up to them because they're kind and they help others. So understanding critical mass is identifying at one point I had 600 employees. I can't lead 600 employees directly. I can't even lead 30 accurately. So what I did is I found who they go to in times of stress, in times of success. Who do they brag to? Who do they complain to? I found those leaders. You win those leaders' love and you develop them to support you, but you also ask them because they're in the positions that you need to lead. So you ask them, how do we lead them better? How do we solve the problems? How do we remove the roadblocks? So understanding the critical mass sometimes is just finding your couple leaders and those leaders follow you and you spend consistent time with them. And what I do in my agency is I have specifically scheduled one-on-ones that I don't miss with my leaders once a month. And then all the leaders together once a month because we all need to be on the same page. So you don't get caught up with doing HR and putting out fires consistently. You spend a good chunk of your time leading your leaders, which are actually your critical mass, which is actually your business.
That's extremely well said, especially in regards to identifying the leader in your organization, right? By who is it that they go to when times are of stress, right? When they're in a time of need. Excellent said. And Simon Sinek was saying something to a similar line. He was like, it's not the title that creates the leader, right? He's like, I know plenty of people that are in very authoritative ranks, but they have zero real leadership skills. But then I know people that are at lower ranks, and because they care about the person to the left of them, the person to the right of them, those people will follow that guy anywhere.
Absolutely. Leadership is not a title. You know, what's funny is there's celebrities out there that have so much leadership over our kids and over some of us. And there's no title of authority. They can't fire, hire, or pay any of us. But we freely follow them. So it's just an example. The leadership is actually not a title. It's a choice. When you decide to lead others and they follow you, it's both freely given. You're deciding to freely lead, and others are deciding to freely give you that leadership.
I love that. Love that. And then there's actually a really, really good book, and I think it's the best book on leadership that reinforces all these principles. Can anybody guess what that book is?
Bible.
Exactly what I was going to say, the Bible.
Yeah.
And I was going to go into this scripture, and there's plenty of scriptures that are here. With an upright heart, he shepherded them and guided them with a skillful hand. So what that says to me is they got in the trenches and they led by example with their team. And there's no better way to serve your team than being in the trenches, being at war with them, and showing them how it's done firsthand. And
Yes.
I'll see so many people that maybe lack that and they skip that step. They start a business and it's like, oh, I'm the CEO now. I don't have to do these things. So they never learn those things. How do you lead something that you have never learned before or you've never done before? So that's why before we go into the next question, I want to share one of my best practices when it comes to leadership that's really changed the game, that made me an operator of my business instead of a slave within my business, because there was so many years that I was in my business, they just couldn't run without me. I had to be there. If I wasn't there, then it was just a totally different dynamic. And what really changed the game for me is when I started creating businesses differently. And what I would do by that is I remember back to my very first business, the best way I trained folks was like, I was my best salesperson. I had somebody on the left, I had somebody on the right. And very quickly, those individuals got up to 60 to 70% of the proficiency as me. And then I started turning them into leaders and putting people underneath them. And the learning that and the lesson that I got out of that is anytime I start a company going forward, is I got to earn the right to become CEO. You don't go join another organization. You don't go apply for a job somewhere and then you're typically automatically CEO. What do you got to do? You got to work your way up through the ranks. And there's good reason for that. And it should be no different, especially in your own business. So what I like to do is, hey, sales position, I'm going to live in that sales position as long as I need to master it, to understand it. Have somebody alongside me attached to my hip so they can learn nuances. But what I'm learning through that is how high can the bar be? How low can the bar be? What challenges am I going to face? What is possible? What are the talk paths? All the little fine nuances of that role, I need to understand so I can set proper expectations. I can develop proper training, and I can hold people accountable to what excellence looks like in that role. And then when I know somebody is underperforming in that role, I know what underperformance looks like. And I'll work my way around the organization in every single position until I got somebody that I've had shadow alongside me, and they're 60 to 70% of my proficiency. Nobody is going to become 100% of me. Nobody's going to become 100% of all of us. We're the business owners. I don't have that sort of expectation. But if I can get somebody to be 60% of me, work my way around the organization until every position is full, that's now an organization that has a foundation that's rock solid. That's an organization that's got equal distribution of weight across all the pillars in the organization. And that's one I can step away from for 2 weeks or a month if I need to, and it's still going to run like a top.
Yeah. Can I add on to that too, David?
Absolutely.
So when and Tony, I'm excited to share this. So the 3 steps to leadership I wrote no less than a decade ago. No joke. I wrote it thinking that I pray to God, I hope someday I can teach this to my team. And I started teaching to my team in the corporate world. Then, because Dave, like I've only been in insurance 4.5 years. I was in the corporate retail world for a long time. I started teaching. It was at least 10 years ago, maybe more. These 3 steps, 3 key steps of leadership: teach it, lead it, and expect it. And I wrote them. I started building a class, praying that someday I could teach others this that didn't report to me, that I didn't pay, because I wanted to help other people grow that didn't just have to be like, yeah, Beau, you're my boss, I'll listen to you. Does that make sense?
Yep.
But you know what's crazy, Dave? Here's why I'm saying this. I woke up one morning, had a dream. This was after I wrote the 3 steps: teach it, lead it, and expect it. In the dream, saw Jesus. And no joke, you know how dreams are, where they're like, nothing's being said, but you know what it's saying, what the dream is saying.
Absolutely.
The dream was essentially saying you modeled your 3 key behaviors of leadership after Jesus. So let me start that. So I'll say it again. Teach it. Teaching others what you practice and the processes you want in your culture and your business. Lead it. Ensuring that the leaders are modeling what is being taught. What if you could only preach what you practice? And then the last one is expect. Accountability to training and leadership standards. So Jesus taught it, modeled it, he led it, and then he expected it. He said things like, now go and sin no more. Did he expect that people would never sin again? No, but he expects you to strive for perfection. So within my business, I train it, we lead it and model it, and we expect them to strive for perfection. But we have grace and forgiveness when they don't, as long as their heart's in the right place and they're working towards the right goal and same vision. They still fit our vision. So it was beautiful because I'm just telling you, like, I love that I wrote those, but it might have just become a fact that I read Matthew a lot because I love the book of Matthew. So I thought I'd connect that back to you. It's not something that I've.
No, I love that, man. I love that. I think it's a great example. And again, I still, firm believer that's one of the best leadership books of all time. As a matter of fact, when you read John Maxwell, all these different leadership books on there, they're based off of biblical principles that are in all these books. So it's not like, oh my gosh, here's this new book. Somebody reinvented the wheel. No, actually the wheel goes all the way back to almost when the wheel was invented. Like it's all there in the Bible. So that's a great resource, for a lot of fundamentals in life, but leadership being one of those. And that leads me into my next question. And actually, this is a question for both of you, Beau and Tony, because I know Tony, you run an incredible operation too, and you're a great leader as well. But what I look at out there with a lot of young leaders or people getting new in the business, one of the things that I think we were all blessed with is we came from an environment where we developed a lot of leadership skills before we went into our environment. Beau, you're in retail. I know, Tony, you had plenty of leadership experience before you came into your agency. That was the same with me. I was at Circuit City. That was one of the core principles that they focused on, was developing leaders. So I got a great education when it came to that. But there's so many people, they chase that American dream and they jump in, but they weren't blessed enough to have that experience prior. And it becomes a struggle point for them, because think about when you first open in your agency, you first open your business. What happens? You get hit with the fire hose directly in the face, and the fire hose never turns off. As a matter of fact, it turns up over time, and that stream becomes more and more strong. And it's like, what do I focus on? So what would you have to say to people that are in the middle of that? They're getting hit with the fire hose right now, and they have to develop themselves into becoming better leaders on some of the best ways that they can do that. So while they're running in their midst of running their business, what they have to do in tandem to that and in parallel, they can work on putting in the reps to become a better leader for their team members.
Tony, I'll let you take this. I've talked enough. Let's go ahead and take this.
From the concept of specifically what you said in regards to a new agent, starting a new agency, I kind of, even though I've been in the business a long time, I fit that model because I left my previous wholesale career in 2022 and started our new agency over here with the Vila. So I'm living in kind of that space right now. So that thought process is pretty fresh to me, with getting in just inundated like a fire hose with information, tasks, things to do, priorities, deadlines, needs of other people, making sure that your team has what they need to succeed and do their job. So this is on my mind. So something that has worked for me, that's helped me so that I can be accountable in what I'm doing, but also be present for my crew, is to look at all the things that I'm getting hit with in the fire hose. What are all the things that are in that whole fire hose? Write them down, prioritize them. What's going to make the most impact today, right now, in this moment, that I need to do that's going to accelerate my business? Which one is just yelling at me, but it really doesn't need my attention? And just taking the time to sort that shit out, pardon my language, but sort those items out and look at them and really understand, what is my focus? Like, what do I really need to be working on right now so that I have the time to work with my team? And team development is always on the top of that list. It's always in there. Certainly depending on how new your team is going to depend on how much time you have to prioritize to that. But that's specifically what worked for me.
No, I love that. I think that's an incredible answer and what people need to hear out there. And I think one thing to layer on top of that too is being truthful and authentic with yourself, right? Because what I've seen with people, I've been there myself before. Where do we lean? We typically lean in a place of comfort. So that's why you see so many people in their agencies. Leadership can be a tough thing. Leadership can be a tough thing to develop. And a lot of times you'll see people that are in their businesses, in their insurance agencies, that'll try to stick in a lane. Well, I do all the customer service work over here. Well, who's running the ship? While you're doing the customer service work, who's manning the wheel? And that's okay for some people to do that. If you got a big operation and that's really not where your passion is, and you have a really good, effective leader that you hired that is filling that role. But I find that that's rare and it's few and far between. And most businesses can't afford somebody that's really effective in that position. To get somebody that's that effective in that role, you got to pay to play. So what do you got to do in the interim? You got to play that role until you can get somebody to fill that role so that the wheel isn't the wheel isn't abandoned. So I think that's, incredibly important for people to look at. And one of the things I like to recommend to people is sit down and do a time audit. Take a week and do this once a quarter, where you take the week and you look at every hour of your day. And as you complete, have a timer on your cell phone that goes off every hour of your day. And then reflect on, what did I do during that hour? And then journal it for the entire week. And you'll be surprised where you allocated your time, because many people will find that, oh my gosh, 50% of my week I spent on these remedial tasks. When it came to leadership, coaching, development, one of the most important things inside of my business, I spent like literally 2-3% of my time on that. And then when you really analyze that and ask the why behind it, I usually find it comes down to discomfort. And the only way to cure discomfort is getting comfortable being uncomfortable, right? Because then what happens is, like everything we've always done at some point in our life, even walking at one point was uncomfortable. But we don't know any better, and we don't know what we don't know, and we're children, and we keep trying to walk and we keep getting up. But somewhere along the way, we get these limiting beliefs in our head. We get anxiety, these emotions that we learn as adults that get in the way of us just, failing forward over and over and over again until that mastery comes into play. So that's, one thing I would encourage all the audience to do is do that time audit and reflect, where are you putting your time as a leader, and how can you be a better leader by repositioning your time in the places where they matter most.
Absolutely. Real quick, we did have a question come in from the viewers.
All right.
In regards to remote work, what are some of the challenges maybe, in developing and cultivating leaders, or just leading a team of remote workers versus people that are right there in your office?
Nice. I don't mind taking this because
Go ahead. And I'll hit after you.
So I have, I don't know, 11 to 13 employees at this point. Only 2 are in-house, because when you run an agency, you need to staff the agency, but the rest are remote. And quite frankly, been remote since COVID. But I will tell you this, my past career prepped me for this, being a district manager, regional and retail. You got stores all over the state. You don't see them once a quarter, but how do you stay in contact with them? How do you build culture, relationships? Goes back to critical mass 1, but also staying in touch 2. How do you do that? In our agency, we have Zoom up 24/7 during the hours of work. We have Zoom up. Now, we don't sit there with our cameras on the whole time, but we start the day with our cameras on. At 8:30, we clock in and we start a meeting right away. I run those meetings, part of those meetings Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Tuesday, Thursday, they do role play and training. So it is a way to start and have that conversation, because one of the biggest things there's 2 things. Two of the biggest things I see for remote workers is, 1, they weren't made to work remote. They can't handle being alone. They need to have interaction with other people. So interviewing those people very thoroughly about why they think they could work from home, what other habits do they need to see people? Are they going to be depressed at home? Are they going to be able to lead and sell to remote over the phone for 8 to 9 hours a day for 5 days a week for the whole year? 1, 2 is keeping the culture. So when we start our meetings, we typically say things like, Tony, tell us about your son's basketball game last night. So we have conversation. And what's so funny is so many agents stop that conversation. Hey, we got to go. We got a meeting. Got to get back to work. But what's funny, in their own office, when they're not remote, they allow people to talk every hour for 10 to 15 minutes. But when they're on Zoom, they don't let them chat. So we need to encourage the relationship building and chat building, because out of the 13 employees, there's a big odds that 50% of them will never call each other or reach out one-on-one. So outside of these meetings and allowing people to conversate, remote work is huge. 1, it's been wildly successful for me. It has helped me get approval to sell in other states, because I hired a bigger amount of people and asked for a buy-in authority, was approved. So there are so many benefits to hiring remote. And I would say, if you could do both, maybe you could do a little bit, but it is hard to keep in-house or hybrid and remote and let it work, because then it becomes tough. So our 2 that will man the office. Those 2 are taking care of all the customers that come in, pay bills, maybe drive by, see something, but very rarely, maybe 18 times a month. So really, you don't need an office. And I will tell you this, I'll end with this. Tony, David, the most controlling leaders I've seen are actually the most afraid they're actually the most afraid. They're afraid that people are going to take advantage of them, that they're going to leave, that they're not going to work, they won't be able to control them, that they're going to quit, that they're going to, do their dishes, walk their dog, take care of their kids. They're just afraid.
Yep.
And how do you
and that fear, what I found is more times than not makes that very thing that they're afraid of come to fruition more than anything else.
Because thoughts become words, become actions. You create your destiny based on your thoughts. So yes, those fearful thoughts actually come to fruition, and you look for them. We do.
Oh yeah, and you think about it, it's kind of like going back to relationships, right? You're in high school and you got the girl, you didn't want to lose the girl, so you're obsessing about her, you're texting her too much, you're like all these different things, and then what happens? Well, the very thing that you're afraid of happens. And I think that's the same thing with any relationships, especially as a leader in your business. There are so many other opportunities out there that people can go. You got to give them that irresistible offer, and it's not a one-time offer. It's like showing up and paying the price and paying the admission every single day to that person, because they can head up down the street and there could be a better offer down there.
Right. So Dave, real fast. So Tony, look at my background. I hope this works. Look at my background. Find all the things that are red. Okay.
I see maybe 2 items.
Okay. Close your eyes. Close your eyes. What color is the Zippo in the background?
Silver.
No, blue. So when you look for things, you find them. You look for positivity, you'll find it. When you look for red, you'll find red, but you'll miss all the other colors. So when you have a negative mindset and you're looking for negativity in people or your leader or your business or your customers, you always will find it. When you look for positivity, you always find it too. I bought a Ford Expedition Platinum and I never saw them. Then I bought one and I see them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It just is what it is.
And for people to know that that's not just hocus pocus, that's actually science. It's called your RAS, your reticulating activating system.
Wow.
That it exists
RAS.
at the base of your skull. And the reason it's there is we process about 50 to 60,000 thoughts per day. And we obviously do not have the capacity to remember or process all those thoughts. So our brain is geared and wired in a way that it prioritizes the thoughts that are most important to us. It prioritizes the information and the data around us that's most important to us. So if you keep telling yourself negative things, what's going to be coming up more in your life? More negative things. But if you have that positive mental attitude, you're optimistic, you're going to have more optimism, more positivity. You're chasing your goals. When people obsess about their goals, what do they get? They get their goal. That's really where the law of attraction truly came from, is like, that's how our brains are designed. And then that's why once you get that Ford Expedition, you start to see them everywhere, because now your brain is prioritizing, is that something important in your life, because you're getting into it and you're looking at it every single day as you drive to work. So now that's why it pops up. So there's actually fundamental science behind that. Your RAS.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you for calling that out. I'll have to read more about that. But I love that. It's like I wake up and I look forward in life, and then who do I thank? Thank God. I thank my employees, my team, my wife. When I see the positive things, when you're looking for them, when you see them, call them out.
Oh,
Tony,
absolutely. No, 100%.
How good does it feel when somebody calls you out for something positive? You just
absolutely.
Thank you so much.
You get more positivity. You get more of that reinforced behavior. I mean, and that's, again, one of the things of leadership. And, before we move on to the next question, I do want to hit again, because I think it's a huge problem for businesses and agency owners out there, this remote workforce. So the biggest thing I'll tell you, what changed the dynamic for me in running a business in general, I went to a conference. I saw a guy on stage, JJ Watson, was running the number 1 through 7 Honda dealerships. Wow. And so he ran 7 Honda dealerships, and in the country, out of thousands of Honda dealerships, every one of them ranked 1 through 7. He was the top 7. He attributed that to leadership and non-compromising culture, built out like a framework of what was important to him for core values, and that was non-negotiable. They didn't care what your performance was. If you didn't live those core values, you were out. And you got to have, especially as you're scaling your organization, in order to lead it, you got to have people that are bought into the vision. You got to have people that are on the same mission. You got to have people. It's just like the Army or the Marines, right? They all have a creed that they follow. They all have a pledge and an oath, and everybody is one front. Everybody is united. That's what your core values are in your operation. And where my operation got to the next level is, we had some people that were performing really good, but we hit a wall when it came to growth. But we came up with our core values, which were, lead with integrity, everything you do, positive mental attitude, show up, solve problems, create solutions. We basically had these that we still operate by in every single one of our organizations. these lists of maybe 10, 12 core values that we operate by. And we realized we had team members that had high performance, but low values, and they operated below the bar. We gave them an opportunity to change, said, hey, you got 60 days. We're not going to fire you tomorrow, but this is the why behind it. We need to grow. We need to get everybody on the same page. And we just can't have negativity. We can't have you on lunch break spreading toxicity. And what result was that was some of those behaviors that it's not in their DNA to change. And what we found is we had some of our best team members that were threatened by new team members that were sabotaging things on their lunch breaks and everything behind the scenes. The lead sources suck and everything else, right? So now, like they're negatively impacting all our other team members. When we had to let those people go, they fully understood it because we communicated the expectations multiple times. I shook their hand in the office multiple times, warned them with written warnings multiple times. And then when it came down to the last one, where it was their last and final warning, I straight up asked them, what do you think is going to happen the next time we have to sit down in this office on this topic? So when it came in, we parted ways in a good, in a good manner. We shook hands. They expected what was going to happen, but our business took off. Yeah. And from a remote standpoint, we learned to do that and create that same culture from a virtual standpoint. So just like you, we have all our people broken out in the offices. We have leaders in the offices. They got to be on camera every single day. That's not the micromanage, but that's actually to create camaraderie, to work together. When you're not on a call, you're in the Zoom room living. You get on a call, you mute it, but you're still there and everybody can see one another just like in an office. We're doing office activities. We're doing team building events. We're doing all the things that you would do in person. And, it's not easy. You got to have infrastructure around it. And we're doing those in a virtual manner with everybody. And then what we do is we take the expectations and we divide every day into a football game. So they know the expectations, we're leading it. Because what does a good leader do is they course correct things early on before they allow somebody to fail. Right. Just like a good coach. A good coach in the middle of a football game, what do? They pull somebody off the sideline immediately and they course correct that behavior so it doesn't happen again through the rest of the game. We got to treat every day like a championship game. So we break up every day into quarters. So there's 8 hours in a day when you take out lunch. So every 2 hours, we say our best people to get the results that they're getting. What are the KPIs? What are the metrics that we're measuring? Okay, great. They got to get 4 hours talk time in a day. They got to get 200 dials in. They got to get 8 quotes, and we want them to get 2 deals. So what is the dirty math on that when we break that up by quarter? Well, they got to do an hour talk time per quarter, 50 dials per quarter. They got to do 2 quotes per quarter, and they got to be on a trajectory at least to get that 1 deal in by the second quarter of the day. And by doing that, what it's doing is it's nipping in the bud because salespeople, they got that like squirrel syndrome, right? They're all over the place. And then all of a sudden they get to the end of the day and then they develop their urgency. But a good leader is helping manage that urgency, encourage them. Hey, what's getting in the way today? I notice you have next to no talk time and the first quarter is almost over. Yeah. So now all of a sudden there's urgency and there's awareness and their focus and their attention is where it needs to be. And they're paying attention where their attention should be, which is driving that results. And it's got to be consistency every day. So that's one of the best ways I found to manage a remote workforce. Celebrate, make it fun, bring it a family environment, but then manage those metrics every day where they're accountable every 2 hours in that remote environment.
Yes. And I want to add something. I have this rule that I picked up along the way in life. It's called the 70-20-10 rule. I actually call it the 10-20-70 rule, if you've ever heard of it. But starts out with the way that people retain information, but it's also the way that we build our training. So what Dave is doing is he's put these documentations, which fall into the 10, which is formal training, orientation programs, handbooks, offer letters, anything you can read. If you can't read it, it never existed. You can't watch it, it never existed. So Dave gives people a piece of paper and he tells them, if you do this, this happens. You'll get commission and bonus. If you don't do this, this happens, a negative thing. So I always say this, seeing is believing. If you're telling somebody, if you're out there trying to manage a workforce that you've never worked side by side with, and all you do is just run your mouth and tell them things and say, remember when I told you this? But you have no documentation, no videos to show them or prove to them what they watched. So 10% of the way people retain is formal. And we start out all our training with formally going over all the documents and watching the videos we can refer to. 20% is social. So you then so Dave, you teach people, you give them somebody that they can, like a mentorship, somebody that they can talk to with, that critical mass person in your agency, your business. You assign them as a mentor to discuss Facebook groups like the Insurance Syndicate. Those are considered mentorship or / social interactions. So you have the documentation that they can read, they can watch. That's 10%, 20% is social, and 70% is on the job training. So a lot of agents out there want to have remote staffs, and all they do is experiential. They have no social and they have no formal training that happens, and they want their team to just eventually become soldiers with no weapons and no training.
Oh yeah, no, the right tools for them. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that was honestly the biggest inspiration while we created our software, Jarvie. Just one of the things
Yeah.
that it does is it helps automate some of that. It's not meant to replace any sort of leadership or training, but it's helped to fill in the gaps that are missing, right?
I
So we
love it.
find what's the biggest thing that you can be doing as a leader is training your people. And there's not enough hours in the day. So that's usually, and it's usually the least favorite thing for most people to do. Let's be honest. Like role playing, it's awkward for them. They get pushed back. So they typically put that at the bottom of the list. So everything else is at the front of the list, and training seems to never be enough time to get it done. Well, it's because it's not important enough. So we wanted to solve that problem. We started Jarvie that allows you to take the perfect pitch or the perfect leadership scenario pre-recorded into the platform. And then it simulates the role play process where now all of a sudden one of your team members, even in your absence while you are doing other things, it allows you to kind of clone yourself. It doesn't replace. You still got to be in the trenches. You still got to be interactive, but it allows them to be training with your virtual avatar or your AI avatar, automating that role play process in the system. Or you got somebody you're trying to train to be a leader. You could have leadership scenarios in there. They watch the video and then they have to respond in real time back into the platform of how they would respond in that specific leadership scenario. So what that allows them to do is you start to scale your company, is it clones you as a leader. So I'm always a big fan of technology and tools, having a great CRM to measure everybody's results. So that allows you to save a lot of time when it comes to nipping those bad behaviors in the bud, and then having a system like this. I mean, tools, if you can have your tech stack, anytime you can automate something that fills in the gaps to reinforce culture, reinforce leadership, reinforce training, I highly, highly recommend it.
Great. Love it. Good stuff.
We had
Remote
another
work is
question. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Beau.
Go ahead.
But we had another question come in from the audience, and it was pretty straightforward. What do you feel like is the number one mistake for a brand new leader?
Well, I think that once so many leaders dream of being a leader. When they get leadership, they hold it tightly. They white knuckle it. They don't want to share it. They don't want to delegate. They think they're the best. They don't want to share it. But like Dave mentioned multiple times today, leadership is not actually about holding tight to the authority that you have. It's actually about sharing and helping others become greater leaders. And my thing as a leadership or as a leader and somebody that trains leaders consistently is that I see they want to hold on tight and they have this thought like, I'm the best at it. I shouldn't delegate it. And Dave mentioned multiple times, 60, 70% as good as you, delegate it. It's your job as a leader to grow them to that 60, 70% as good as you, then pass it on. And I can admit this because I've been a leader for a long time. There are a lot of people in my agency who do certain things way better than me. I can admit that. Mm-hmm. And guess what? They love that I can admit there's certain things they do better than me. And that's okay, because I can still lead somebody. Was Phil Jackson as good as Michael Jordan? No, never. But he led him, and he let him follow him, and he followed him. And Kobe Bryant followed him. Tom Brady followed Bill Belichick. So you don't have to be better than everybody in order to lead them. And this kind of pride or arrogance needs to be let go, and understand that people just want leaders that are real, that are authentic, that are willing to admit when they're wrong, but also fix it. Nobody likes a leader who apologizes all the time or is always wrong, but does not grow. You must grow. So admit it, look in the mirror, figure out what's wrong. If you don't have a mentor that's where you want to be someday in insurance, that'll help reveal things you need to hear. Dave, the best relationships we're ever going to have are people that tell us the truth. My wife tells me the truth all the time. All the time.
Yeah, and even at home, what do you have to do? You got to lead your ship. Your wife likely wouldn't be in a partnership or a relationship with you if you weren't a good leader leading your ship when it comes to your family at home. So I think leadership,
and that is why
not just in the business, it's not just in the workplace. It's like, what is each and every one of us doing in our relationships, in our household, in our faith to lead by example and, be that leader in our lives.
Yeah.
And I think on that question too, on that question, what's one of the one of the biggest things that I see is it goes back to that discomfort, right? One of the biggest things, one of the biggest mistakes people make is they sit in their setback. Well, this is uncomfortable, so I'm just going to avoid it. And then in that avoidance, it builds this like false sense of fear in the midst of procrastination that they're not, stepping into that role as a leader. And then it becomes this over analysis paralysis where I want everything to be perfect before I step into it, and perfection never happens. So they never truly step into that role as a leader. And they're almost an employee of their own business working alongside other employees, and there is no leader in that business. So what I'd say to people is, yeah, look in the mirror and don't be afraid to fire yourself. And it might not necessarily mean fire yourself, but ask yourself in the mirror, if I was my own boss, what would I think of myself as an actual leader?
Yeah.
When you're actually deeply analyzing what leadership looks like and what should looks like, and you think about some of the best leaders you ever met or worked for or encountered in your life, and then you do a comparative analysis of you to them, would you fire yourself as a leader and would you want somebody else? And then if the answer is yes to that, then what do you need to do differently to be the true and authentic leader that you need to be, that your team deserves to have, that is going to take everything to the next level for everybody? Because what do ships do when it's leadership? Other ships rise with the tide. So when you're rising as a leader, everybody else is following alongside you. But if you're just coming in and you're being an employee every single day and you're doing remedial tasks, well, yeah, that's your decision. You have the freedom of choice and the free will to do that. But the consequence of that, what do you think everybody else in your team is going to do? They're going to live into that same place. They're never going to become better. But if you're becoming better always, ships rise with the tide. Be the tide.
Amen. Yep. And I had a friend tell me this one time, and I don't know where he got it from, but as a leader, you need to set the thermostat, or not be the thermometer. So set the thermostat of the culture and the flow of the agency, the non-negotiables, the vision. You set that, stays there, and you can raise the temperature as you go. But what you don't want to be as a leader is somebody who is high when you win and low when you lose.
Yep.
Being a great leader is somebody who finds consistency. Consistent people are trustworthy. Inconsistent people, we don't date, we don't marry, we don't hire. So as leaders, we have to be consistent. They need to know some level of how Dave's going to respond when Dave is frustrated or upset, or when they fail. Is Dave going to scream, yell, and fire them on the spot? No. Dave has a process. He's consistent. He sits them down. He reminds them of the handbook, of the vision. Then he gives them a warning, so they know what to expect because of consistency. As leaders, we need to be consistent. When I was young, I was inconsistent. Tony, I let people offend me for too long, and eventually I blew up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I needed to address it sooner, be more consistent with my feedback, both positive and negative. And as I grew in consistency with the way that I coached and led people and the way that I treated them, I became a better leader, and people respected me, because trust is actually built and grown through consistency.
And I actually got another question on here too, is like, because I think this is important, right? You got to have people on your team that also have their own vision.
Oh, yeah.
And they're bought into your vision at the same time. So tell me about that dichotomy and how you handle that and balance that the right way. Each one of you, Tony, Beau, how do you handle vision, embracing their vision while getting them to live into your vision at the same time? Because I think that's when true magic happens.
I would say your vision as the leader needs to be established with them when you bring them on the team. That's an onboarding thing. Like, if they're not buying into your vision from the beginning, what are you hiring them for? That's the way I would think about it. Like, that needs to be, they need to understand the vision of the agency, where it's going, your culture, all of that. And they're reading that as part of the contract agreement that they're signing when they come on board. Now, granted, your vision would evolve probably over the time, but again, and it's going to come back to actions, man. If your actions are in line with your vision, they're going to see the authenticity in you, the integrity in what you're doing, should be able to buy into it. And then I think when it comes down to training them to have a vision, again, some of that discovery should be done in onboarding. When I would interview guys in my sales crew, I would always ask them, what are their goals? What are you trying to accomplish in life? Especially now in insurance, when an insurance agent comes to me and they're like, hey, I want to get into insurance. I'm like, why? Not because I think it's a dumb idea. I think it's probably the smartest idea you've come up with so far at this point in your life. But why? What makes you think this is the right choice for you? What are you trying to accomplish in insurance? Then I can find out, do they have any vision?
Yep.
is
Yeah.
Love
has
that.
good
Love
vision,
that.
but maybe is a little bit misguided, and I can
I
just
love
help
that.
them point it in the right direction. And then as you continue to help them be exposed to the opportunities that insurance can provide, you got to teach them to grow their vision.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Just like we grow, like David said, we have to grow. They have to grow too into their vision. So, Tony, I don't want to interrupt you. Are you done with your thought?
I was just going to add one more
Go
thing,
ahead.
like
Yeah, go ahead.
short-term targets will help teach them how to grow their vision.
Love
Mm,
that.
Because you
mm.
hit them
I
with
love
something
that.
too
I
massive
mean,
up
it
front,
sounds
they're
cheesy, but
gonna
how do
roll
you
back.
eat an elephant one bite at a time,
One bite
right?
at
But
a
if you
Yeah.
tell them like, hey,
That's good.
you gotta do 100 items next month, well, you're gonna get the wind out of their sails really, really quickly. So like slow, incremental, attainable, smart goals. Love it.
Yeah. Love it. So those are great points. I'll just add a little bit to that. We have a motivational questionnaire that I wrote decade ago, and I've slowly updated it over the time. But Tony, it hit me one day. David, it hit me. I was asking the motivational questionnaires after the interview, and I was like, "Oh man, they crushed the interview with the typical interview questions." Even when I said, "Why?
Yep.
Tell me more. Explain that," because people can be really coached up on interview questions and how to
Oh yeah, a
answer
lot of
them.
professional interviewers
So
out there.
but when you get to their real motivations, it's scary. In their first week, I find out, for example, a couple of years ago, I find out this guy was like, I want to be a teacher or own a coffee shop. And I'm like, well, shoot, I thought you in the interview wanted to be a leader here someday. So how do those line up? So would have been a better question to ask in the interview. So I added some motivational questionnaire that I wanted to know into the interview. And then I dive deeper once they start. One of my favorite questions, and it may not line, it is on the questionnaire, it may not line up exactly with the question, but I ask this question. I just love it. Tony, I'm hiring you. I say, what do you think my role is in your success, in your development? What do you think it is? Because you know why? So many leaders are different. I want to know what they expect from me so that I can tell them what to expect from me. Because when I ask them, so many people are like, oh, you just get out of my way, give me leads. Oh, give me the training, develop me, help me own an agency someday. So everybody's thought process is slightly different on what a leader should do. And I'm not trying to fulfill exactly what each person thinks a leader should do, because then I will be seeking to serve, or fulfill or get everybody to like me. And that's not really what a leader does. So you should be likable, but you don't need to seek to please every single person on your team. So I love asking that question. And there's questions around, what are your personal, professional goals? Tell me where you think you're personally maybe in a year, professionally maybe in a year, and then we grow from there. And I want them to just talk about things like dream vacations. Do you want to buy a house? So help them grow. And like Tony said, I love asking the question, why? Why do you want to be a leader? Why do you want to own an agency? Why do you want to buy a coffee shop someday? Why? I want to hear why. Because so many people think that ownership is different than it is. One, some people really just want financial freedom, and that's all they're trying to really say is, I really just want more financial freedom so I can spend more time with my kids. Well, guess what? If you do this job correctly, I can help you find that now.
Love
Very
that.
soon.
Absolutely. We had another question come in from
I'll
our
add one more thing to that before we go to that question. I was like,
Yes,
one
sir.
thing on vision
Hit it.
is my purview on vision is the right vision provides you with the clarity to have alignment with your assignment. I'll say it again. The right vision provides you with clarity to have alignment with your assignment. It's like, how do I do that? So what we do at our team, we'll actually do vision boards. And I want to understand what makes you tick at like the deepest levels. Like, what are your personal goals? What are your relationship goals? What are your health goals? What are your business goals? And then once I understand them and I understand the why, and I tell them like, hey, I don't want you just to put it on paper because other people are putting it on paper, or you think it's what you want me to hear. I want what truly matters to you. Because when we can become in an alignment with other people's assignment, we typically don't have to worry about our own goals because now they're congruent and in an alignment. And if they hit their mark, like, we're never going to have to worry about hitting our mark. And it changes the conversation when somebody's not making a sale, somebody's not hitting the talk time, because those are all numbers. And what are numbers? They're emotionless data. But what you have to do is connect the why, connect the purpose, connect the emotion to the number. So now when I'm having a conversation, okay, first quarter of the day, second quarter of the day, you have no dials in. Well, I got this going on, this and that. Well, is that fair to your little boy that you have home? Is that fair to your wife when you told me your goal was you have to get out of the apartment in the dangerous neighborhood you live in that's not big enough for your growing family, is it fair they got to wait another week, another day, another month, another year maybe, because you're here 8 hours a day anyways and you chose not to show up? When you gave me those goals as a leader, it's my job, my duty, my responsibility to hold you accountable to those goals. And unless you were dishonest about them, did you truly mean that and you still want that? Well, what do you think you need to do differently today for little Johnny that's sitting at home so we can make that thing happen and we can celebrate 6 months from now that new place you're living in? Now, what does that do? That pops a spark, because I'll do anything for my boy. I'll do anything for my family. And you got to connect to that emotion and take the data out of it, right? And then that's how we truly, truly win. So it's like getting that vision that provides alignment to the assignment.
That's excellent. That might actually preemptively answer the question that came in from the audience, but I'm going to put it out there.
All right.
How do you deal with the agent or producer who wants it, or that you want it more than they do? Sorry, I almost misread. How do you deal with that producer when you want it more?
I think it's a big part of that, because I think a lot of times when you want it and they don't want it, there's there's that disconnect, right? You got a wire, so it's a wire across the board like this, but it's frayed in the middle. So what can you do to bridge the connection from what you want them to want and what they truly want in their life, and then trying to tie those two together? Because I can promise you they do tie together, but they just don't have the clarity, and that's our job as the leaders, is connect the dots, connect the wires for them. So now all of a sudden what's happening, we got electricity flowing through that wire now. They know that if I commit this particular activity, this particular action, that it's going to result in X, Y, Z. And then guess what happens to keep consistency? A little thing called momentum. So that vision, that motivation, that purpose, everybody's got to have a purpose in life. But once your purpose gets you started, the momentum will carry you. And I'll tell you, as a leader, showing up and just keeping the momentum is one of the easiest things you can do. But the second you decide not to show up and you want to let that momentum die and you want to walk by and live less than your core values and not show up as the authentic leader that you're meant to be every day, well, it takes 21 days to build a culture. It takes 3 days to kill it. So once you got that momentum, protect the hell out of it.
Yeah. So I want to add to that. I'm excited about what Dave said. I love this question. I can add even more. One, just start out by realizing you're not a superhero. You're not a superhero. Can't fix, can't make everybody great. And it took a while for me. I recruited the best people, and all of a sudden they don't want it, but they have all the potential to do it. So my buddy shared this example the other night. He is a football coach. So they have a problem on this football team. You know why? They do not have a clear starting quarterback. Because you know why? The best quarterback on the team is their best middle linebacker, who is, no joke, a Division I prospect for multiple colleges. And he happens to be their best quarterback, but he's been a middle linebacker, better than anybody on the team at middle linebacker, but one of the best in the state, has scholarships lined up. The coach could be selfish and say, we need you at quarterback, and potentially ruin his chances at being a middle linebacker at a Division I where he could go on to be in the NFL. So sometimes we have leaders who force us to be in positions they need us to fill that aren't really for us. So just because you think somebody should be in that role because of their potential does not mean they should be. Their fulfillment and their calling may be somewhere else. You can't force everybody to be what you need them to be because they may be the best at it. So understanding that, hey, my goal as a leader is to help other people find who they truly are and help them find fulfillment in being who they are. And sometimes the best middle linebacker, just because he's the best quarterback, does not mean he should do both or switch from middle linebacker to quarterback by you convincing them that it's what's best for the team. Sometimes the best thing to do is to let them go, be a man or a woman of your word, of what you wrote in your handbook, in the standards you set. Sometimes that best person needs to be fired. They need to know, hey, Tony, your talent ain't going to carry you forever. You got the potential, but you don't work at it and you don't want it. Goodbye. Come back when you're serious. Or never. Sometimes the best person needs to be cut from that team and let go. Be a man or woman of the words and the standards you have set forth. Because if you're not, you're a liar. You're a liar. You set standards, they don't hit them, and you continually move them because you love this person, you're a liar. Your team sees it too.
Love it. Love it.
Well said.
And I think we're just about at our time here today, but as we're looking at wrapping up, maybe what is a one-liner blurb from each one of us as a final thought to wrap up this episode on leadership with Ask the Experts.
Man, one liner. That's tough to ask me. Dave knows me very well. Hey man, put in one line. I might want to think for one sec. Tony, you got something that comes to you? Okay, I got one.
Not immediately, because I just think lead by example, man. I mean, that's
Yeah.
I think that's almost even the theme of the show. It's like,
100%.
understand that and actually you said it best in the beginning, and it's your method. Teach it, lead it, expect it, man.
I like it. I
Teach
love it.
it,
I
lead
got
it,
one other
expect
thing that I love, and it's surround yourself with people you can celebrate, not tolerate. That can go for your business. That can go for who you work for, who you work with. David, I don't want you to work for me if all you do is complain about me. You could find something better, somewhere where you won't complain. And guess what? If I go home and I complain about you, I should let you go also, or I need to change my mindset. So surround yourself with people that celebrate you, that you can celebrate, not tolerate. I think that's a good one for a leader.
Yeah, no, I think mine would be is, what I started it out with is what I'll end with is lead your ship. When it
Lead
comes
it.
to leading your ship, which way are you rowing? Are your actions consistent with your words? And then what shadow are you casting, right? The shadow of the leader, because people will do as you do before they do as you say.
Amen. Perfect. Good stuff, guys. Thank you for having
I
me
love
on.
it. I love it. Well, thank you so much. I mean, this has been great rapping with both of you today on leadership. I hope our audience got a lot of value on this. This is what I love doing in this growth. I love this show because we just get to serve. I mean, that's what the best leaders do, right? Is servant leadership.
Yep.
So that's one of my most favorite thing to do is serve other people. So I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful to be part of the insurance syndicate. I'm grateful to be able to serve all you amazing people that I look forward to getting to know even deeper. And that's a wrap. So it is July 18th. And this is the third episode of Ask the Expert. Stay tuned for episode number 4, where we're going to have another compelling guest next week, same day, same time, same channel. And until then, you guys have an amazing week. I'm out.
Thank you.